much later. Most school districts selected for audit have been chosen for their failures to meet expectations on MCAS test scores and were considered poorly functioning districts. In the case of Foxborough, however, a citizen's petition triggered the audit. Such citizen input was valued by the council, indicating that it should be reviewed as a possible additional mechanism for identifying districts for audits in the future. Foxborough may serve as a model for such a mechanism. Council members highlighted the strength of the unified force presented by the attendance of both School Committee Chairman Harrington and the Superintendent Martez to represent Foxborough schools at the meeting. Together, they presented the progress that has been made towards remedying and strengthening the identified areas of poor performance and areas needing improvement. Of the 14 districts that were audited, of the 14 district audits that were presented to the council for review on October 1st, only 4 districts sent representatives. 3 of those sent their superintendents, and only Foxborough appeared with both the committee chairman and the superintendent. The strength of the unified force was also based on the presence of the public. Foxborough was the only district with a member of the community in attendance. The council saw as desirable to audit high-functioning districts, as this may help to tune up their audit process. They discussed the benefits of social capital that involvement of community groups represented, especially when citizens agreed with the needs identified by the EQA. Foxborough was unique in that it was the first district ever to invite the audit team to return to document the progress made since the 2004-2006 school years. Perhaps the bar has been raised in Foxborough. Very good. We see that continuous improvement is taking root. As stated at the Education Management Council meeting in Boston, public participation is an integral and valued part of accountability in public education. Other community members will need to continue the active support and public involvement. The bar has been raised in Foxborough for the community participation and leadership quality, of which the whole state can be proud. And for that, I congratulate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other comments from anyone?
Just a question
Yes, ma'am.
for clarification. The inbox, it could take a week or more to get to us.
Correct.
So perhaps we'll talk about that as part of the communication issue. Is it possible to get a copy of that letter tonight since?
Yes. Mrs. Navedo, would you please give Mr. Jackson a copy of that so he can make a copy for members of the committee? You can make one for Frank as well if you'd like. Do you have extra copies, sir?
No.
You have copies of yours?
It's a comment about the status right now. There's no direct questions that need to be answered, but if you want to have a copy, we can make a copy right now.
Okay. I guess we've tried to make it very clear that you're allowed to come forward and make whatever statements you want as long as they fit the timeline.
Yes.
And that you bring copies of your statements to the committee so they can follow along with you, read it, or you can send it to us in advance.
I apologize. I thought about it, but it's more of my feelings about what's going on right now than questions that need to be answered.
Well, I understand.
But I understand. I apologize.
So
last time.
After tonight, I am not going to allow you to violate the policy. It's hard for us sometimes to follow what you're saying. It's easier if it's in front of us. We can read it, we can listen to it, and we can take notes on the side of it.
I understand.
All right?
Won't happen again.
Thank you.
As you know, I had a very heavy schedule in the last 6 months, and I haven't been able to be here. And I was looking forward to coming and thanking you, especially Larry and the committee, for having given answer to the questions that I had that were lingering for 6 months. The action that the reply that you gave us basically ended up the old Spillane area where inconvenient yet valid questions were being ignored. I want to thank you also for declaring the infamous Collins report complete. There was no further investigation performed after it was presented. This lack of further action indicates that it was just a maneuver to scare us as we were getting too close for comfort. I enjoyed the broadcast of the October 1st meeting. The broadcast of the meeting was one of the many requests that we had, and now it's a total reality, and it's great. I enjoyed during this meeting listening to Dr. Olardi, Mr. Theodosis. The information presented continues to educate parents and the public at large. We all become better citizens by the information shared that was never available before. Regarding the nurses, it was great to see that they were publicly recognized with an standing ovation. Fantastic idea. It was long overdue. Listening to Ms. Sharon Kelly talk about the nurses and their contribution was also very illuminating. We are all in Foxboro more aware of the contribution to the well-being of our children. I remember a couple of years ago when their importance was being minimized, just to save some funds, which were found last year in the infamous revolving accounts. It is also positive to see that you and Dr. Martis share the main table, conveying the message that there is a balance between the committee and the superintendent's roles. There is an understanding of your obligations, there's no conflict from that point of view, and that there is a mutual respect for each other as individuals, as the two most influential people in the education of our children allow each other to say, correct me if I'm wrong, which is fantastic. It gives me the impression that you're running the school system as it would be a corporation, and that you are concerned with bringing profits to the shareholders, the citizens of Foxborough. What will the dividends be? My main guess is that the dividends will be, most certainly, very well-educated children, and that is fantastic. We're all thankful for that. Yes, there is a need for accountability. You expect it, and you welcome it. So do we. This is truly remarkable to see that we are finally all in the same page. Congratulations to all of you for all that has been achieved in 18 months. During the meeting, I also noticed that when you gave the report on the EQA final document, you reminded me of something that I learned early in my career, that success has many parents, but failure is an orphan. It is of great importance to remember how we got here. The Foxborough Education Organization was accused of many things, but we were looking for answers to our questions. We were known then as the irksome threesome to some. To others, just three parents that no matter what was done or said would never be satisfied. We were asked to leave a PTA meeting. We were accused of harassment and many other things. Yet we never wavered on our quest for openness and accountability. We owe a great debt of gratitude to Deb and Andres, as their perseverance brought them to the Department of Education and found a way to ensure that the EQA would audit our system. It took them hundreds of hours to write the citizens' report, which documented what they saw was wrong with the schools, the administration, the school committee, and it's still available on our website. The EQA visited Foxborough by a petition initiated by Debbie and Andres. It was signed by 10 citizens, including one that now sits in the committee and is the chairman. Larry, I thank you for believing in us when it was not popular. Debbie Navarro was the driving force for the EQA audit. Andres has been the driving force to continue with the dissemination of information so that the entire community benefits from the research. You made reference that the EQA did not make any review to their final draft after the letter that Deb and Andres wrote. In their letter, they were asking them about changes in the final draft, changes that were of importance as compared with the original report. You agreed that the questions were valid, yet you did not follow up with the EQA. Maybe we can get an answer from them. It may help us better understand the reasoning behind those changes. You also mentioned that the findings of the EQA audit demonstrated that the lack of leadership justified the $175,000 payoff to Dr. Terrell. I guess it also justifies the use of the good riddance phrase that I used when Dr. Terrell left. We were both criticized, and some believe that those leaders would walk on water. I know that I have embarrassed David and Andres tonight. They were not aware of what I was going to say tonight. They have given of themselves with only one goal in mind, and that is to make Foxborough a better town. I am honored to have them as my friends, and maybe one day they will get the public recognition they deserve for their dedication, professional integrity.
you very much.
Thank you. Very good.
Well, on the, yes, sir.
Good evening, Andres Navedo, 94 Spruce. The policy that the chair referred to does not exist in the current policy manual. The policy manual revision process has addressed the desire from the committee to have statements written and submitted to them ahead of time, but that policy manual has not been approved. So as it is in the policy, that policy does not exist. Further, we would like to promote public participation from all people. We have the ability to write, to prepare, and to bring to the committee not only the electronic form but the printed form. However, I believe that this committee and this community would be better served by encouraging participation and removing the barriers such as written statements, and that the technology and the professional needs are there to have faithful and accurate documentation of the process. Thank you very much.
Let me just respond, sir. We have allowed 3 people almost 15 minutes this evening to speak to the committee. There has been nobody questioning what was said. All this committee has asked, in a matter of respect, is so that we could see the comments. We've asked this a number of times in advance. This was not the first time this evening. It is easier on us, I think we all agree, if we had it in front of us, even if you just brought it the evening and handed out the copies, so that, number one, we can follow along. Number two, we can make notes if we'd like to follow up or make any comments. We think that's very respectful of us. And then finally, there's been some criticism in the past by those in the audience who have claimed that the secretary has paraphrased what they said incorrectly. And so what we've said, to make it easier for the minutes, easier for the history, that we would attach to the minutes the statement that the person read, so it's not the secretary paraphrasing what she thought they said or what she thought that they heard. We've said that a number of times. Unless there's someone on the committee that disagrees with my interpretation, I'd like to move on.
Sir,
Does anybody disagree on the committee?
No.
All right, then let's move on.
Sir, we have not addressed that Mrs. Will's issue. The committee approves the minutes.
That's
and
correct.
they take final
And
responsibility
the
for
committee
its
makes
content.
the decisions, and the committee has asked respectfully on multiple occasions to simply give us a copy, just like we provide copies out there so that you can follow along with us. It is easier for us. We've asked that respectfully. We've not denied you the right to speak. We've not denied you a time limit or anything else.
I concur.
We simply asked for that. Thank you. Now, in a spirit to move on an evening of recognition, we have 2 absolutely phenomenal employees that I'd like to turn. Oh, okay. Well, since these folks are waiting, I'll come back to the minutes. We're running a little bit behind, and I don't want these folks who have given up their evening to come here to be recognized to be delayed. And it's almost 7:20 right now. So I'd like to ask both Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Murphy to come forward, if you would, here, and I'll turn the meeting over to Chris.
Thank you. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to recognize our professional staff on occasion, and these 2 recognitions are really remarkable. So what I'd like to do is, first I'll start with Walter Mitchell. On June 21st, Mr. Walter Mitchell of the English Department was one of 7 teachers honored at the State House in Boston for having been selected as a finalist for the 2007-2008 Massachusetts Teacher of the Year Award. Mr. Mitchell, who was nominated for the award by Matthew Carlson, class of 07, credits the students at Foxborough High School for this award. To quote him, "I received this recognition on behalf of my students, and I felt extremely honored to be representing them. I am sure that when the Board of Education reviewed the videotapes of my classes, they were extremely impressed with how bright, insightful, and enthusiastic the students at Foxborough High School are. At the ceremony, Mr. Mitchell and all the finalists and semifinalists were congratulated by Governor Deval Patrick and presented individual citations and plaques by David Driscoll, the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Board of Education. In addition, Mr. Mitchell received a citation from the Massachusetts Senate from Senators Jim Timilty and Scott Brown, and a citation from the Massachusetts House of Representatives from Representatives Fred Barrows and Richard Ross. Each finalist and semifinalist was presented with a check for $2,000 from Hannaford Food Incorporated, the official sponsor of the event, to be used for classroom enhancements and professional development opportunities. When asked what the highlight of the ceremony was for him, Mr. Mitchell said, quote, "The most privileged I felt was when Commissioner Driscoll pointed to the town flags that were hoisted in the Great Hall on the teachers' behalves. To be representing Foxborough and all the fine students and families I have worked with over the past 10 years is as great an honor as I could ever receive." Walter, congratulations. This is truly a...
Thank you.
To be recognized not only by your peers as you have in the past, but to be recognized by your students as well. As I said to the teachers on their first day back, teaching is one of the most noblest professions in the world. People can remember their teachers from first grade through high school for 20, 30, 40, or 50 years, more so than they can remember almost anyone else. The impact you have on people's lives, children's lives, parents' lives, just goes on for decades after decades. And the number of students that have been fortunate enough to work with you and to be in a partnership with you are going to value that partnership for a lifetime.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Walter, as a parent of one of your former students, I contribute my son's experience and his ability to write as well as he does to having been one of your students. And if your name comes up at any time, it always puts a smile on my son's face because he knows what an impact you had on his ability to do what he does even at 24 years of age at this point. So I can't thank you enough for what you did for my son, and I know you do it for every child in the system, and that's what makes you an outstanding teacher.
Thank you, Martha. It was a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. We all appreciate your effort.
Thank you.
Okay, our second recognition tonight is Kevin Murphy. And I will read part of a letter that was sent to Kevin by Bill Gain, who's the Deputy Director of the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. And it says, "Dear Kevin, congratulations. It is with great enthusiasm that we write this letter to you to inform you that you have been selected to receive the 2007 MIAA Wellness Coordinator of the Year Award. This award is our way of saying thank you and recognizing your continued efforts and contributions toward helping students in your school community make healthier life choices." And then it goes on to say that Kevin received the award at the 11th Annual Wellness Summit at the Sheraton Hotel in Milford on September 28th. So again, and we know how important this whole issue is, and becoming more and more important, I think, each day. So Kevin, on behalf of the Foxborough Public Schools, congratulations, well-deserved award. Thank you very much.
And again, Kevin, it isn't just your classroom that you're recognized. It's the amount of hours you give outside of the classroom, not only as a coach in track, but your mentoring of students. We've heard over and over from students that those sometimes that are experiencing difficulty or trouble, or maybe trying to make a decision between something that might be right and something that might be wrong, they don't have a lot of people they can go to and trust that they could have an honest conversation and get a viewpoint of what they might want to do. or not do. What I hear from the students is that you don't lecture them, you don't tell them what the answer is. You ask them the kinds of questions to teach them how to think through the consequences of their actions and to take responsibility for what they are about to do or not do. And so for the classroom, the outside of the classroom, but more importantly for the lives you've impacted by being willing to listen, by being non-judgmental, and by helping them in life's tough lessons, you will be remembered for the rest of your life as well.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of Walter and myself, I would like to thank the committee and thank our staffs. It's our entire K through 12 staff that help us and do the work and make us look good. So I want to thank all of them and for all the support. Our administrators, we wouldn't be able to do the job that we do if we didn't have their support all the time. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I
One
just
more.
add to one
Go ahead.
quick thing is, I have worked at a number of different schools and systems and bounced around the prep school circuit for a while there because of coaching. I have never seen such appreciative kids in all my life. I cannot tell you what these kids are like working with every day. And as I look around this table, I mean, I've had the privilege of working with Barry Wills, Frank Slattery, Danny Musinskis. Had a wonderful experience with him in AP last year. I just feel very, very privileged to have the kind of kids who you do the least little bit for them. They'll write you a note, they'll pat you on the back. That's unusual in today's world. Most kids are very introspective. They don't get outside of themselves very much. And that's why we're here. We try to help them get out of their shells. But Foxborough kids have made an enormous impact on me, and they are my inspiration. And it's because of them I'm sitting here today. So I want to thank you all.
Thank you very much. And one more standing ovation. Thank you very much. Now, since it is a night of recognition, I thought we would do one other recognition this evening. And we have a recognition. I would like to read the following.
What do you want doing here?
For those of you that aren't aware, this is the broader Slattery family that is coming in here this evening. And I'd like to read the following. This is and we have copies for the audience so you can follow along with it if you'd like. Martha is going to be receiving a Distinguished Public Service Award from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And the plaque reads as follows. Martha Slattery is in her 10th year as a school committee member and served last year as the chair of the Foxboro School Committee. Martha has always been an advocate for students, even when she was a lone voice for change. As noted at a recent meeting with the EQA board, Foxboro was cited as experiencing a crisis in leadership in 2006. However, EQA also stated that Foxboro has made significant progress since then. That is partially because Martha Slattery stepped forward to lead the necessary change in Foxboro. Under the leadership of Martha Slattery, the school committee has completed the following in just 14 months. Approved a new strategic plan, the first one in 10 years. Approved the first ever comprehensive and measurable school and district improvement plans. Totally revamped the budget process and implemented monthly financial reporting, something totally lacking before this. Approved the first curriculum review cycle and funded new ELA and math programs which were sorely outdated. Added back positions previously cut in library and guidance and added new math specialist positions. Substantially increased funding for IT-related expenses in the district and nearly doubled the purchase of student computers. Provided teachers with the first increase in funding for supplies in 4 years and made necessary capital purchases from revolving accounts, all without implementing any student user fees. Martha even found the time to spearhead the search for a new superintendent and assistant superintendent and led a policy review committee to review all district policies, most of which were over 20 years old and no longer in compliance. The relationship with the municipal government is better than ever, and staff morale has never been higher. Martha's vision for excellence, her passion for students and staff, her willingness to challenge, even when she was a lone voice for change, and her willingness to never give up have led to significant positive change for the students and staff in Foxborough. For these reasons and so many more, we nominate Martha Slattery for the Distinguished Public Service Award. Martha.
Walter Mitchell said that the students here in Foxborough were his inspiration. This is my inspiration. My children, my sons-in-laws, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren, you, my husband. I couldn't do this without any of you. And I do it for you and everybody else, and I love you dearly. I couldn't imagine what you were walking into. Thank you. Thank you. These are my girls, all four of them. Full tiebreaker. We had 3 and 3. Now we're 4 and 3. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Look at this. How's your broken arm? I didn't get the size yet. I love you. Boys don't like kisses, so.
Yeah, another 12 years.
This is Frank. He's the one we were talking about.
Well, what did I do now?
You have to come back. There was a class you didn't complete.
When I'm under a lot of pressure, that's the thing I have.
Come back to class.
No, that I'm missing one first grade.
Oh, God.
It's tomorrow morning. A gentle giant. Thank you. Amanda, I didn't get out of work so early.
I was judged.
Thank you all. Now you can all go home and go to bed.
Go home and do your homework.
That's done. We just go home, get our pillows, get our blankets, get under them.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well, that was a shock.
You're a hard one. It's supposed to be, Martha. You're a hard one to beat, Mrs. Sorry.
Oh, my God.
I think we should also mention what's going to happen at the awards day.
We were just going to do that.
Thank you. I don't want to beat you all here.
Chris is the co-chair of this year's session, the MMAS session, and there will be a awards luncheon on Friday, November 16th, 17th, that Friday, at which time Martha will be presented her award in front of all of her fellow school committee members across the state and superintendents and assistant superintendents. But the folks at Mask strongly suggested that we recognize you this evening in the community rather than wait to surprise you down the Cape, because they thought it was important for the community to have the opportunity of recognizing you as well.
That's a long time to keep a secret. That would be a long time to keep a secret. It is
Well, at least that way I won't wear dungarees that day.
Friday the 16th. Friday the 16th.
Thank you. Thank you very much for thinking of me. I appreciate it.
Just if I can pick up on that, that luncheon, I've attended a number of them. It really is a special luncheon, and they're talking about people statewide that they're honoring. So it's typically about 700 people in attendance at that at the superintendent school committee conference each year. So it's a terrific award, really a terrific award.
For being good company. Thank you very much, each and every one of you, for putting this in. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Okay, let's quickly look at the minutes from October 1st.
How banal.
Wendy, did you have any comments?
Yes, I just wanted to let the committee know that in the October 1 minutes, it does say that you read a statement concerning the EQA meeting. And I just wanted to let everybody know that I do have a copy from Larry to attach to those minutes, so it will be a permanent part of the minutes. Just like everything else, all the other things.
Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes? None? Do I have a motion to approve? Made by Kate, seconded by Katie. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we're running a few minutes early. We want to do the Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough right now, Kate?
I'd like to, while we're getting set up, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize and thank Paul Jackson for bringing up our website, so that'll be a backdrop. And for those that are at home, it is the community group that was sponsored, actually as a result of the school committee working with the selectmen and the Foxborough Police Department. Following last March's forum, there was a community group started to get the community and parents more involved and engaged, and a group of about 10 people or so. And one of the things that we did is set up a website, which you're about to see, and it's called the Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough, and that website address is partnershipfordrugfreefoxborough.ning.com. And would you like to introduce Chris Long?
No, go ahead.
And here tonight is our chair of the group, Chris Long, who's got a long community involvement. She's been with the JCs and you name the group, and she's been very heavily active in all community efforts, and she's agreed to work as the chair for this committee. So she'll fill you in on what's been going on.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Long. I moved to Foxborough just under 10 years ago from Nantucket, and like Kate said, I was heavily involved in the JCs for many years and have decided to go put my energy towards something new. Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough came about after the program that the school committee, I believe, put on last fall. And we have been meeting, trying to meet once a month since then, and coming up with some really good ideas and goals to bring to Foxborough to try to help make it drug-free. Realistically, it won't be drug-free, but we can make a difference. We're volunteers, obviously, and some of the goals that we've set up for this year, because we've been brainstorming and sitting and talking, and Chief O'Leary's in it, Mr. Murphy's in the group, Kate's in the group, there's a few local parents that are in the group, yep. And we've been brainstorming. We have great ideas, and we can write a book on all the great ideas, but you got to focus on a couple important things. One of the programs that's in Foxborough is Red Ribbon Week, and from what I've heard a few years back, it was a great program, and it wasn't just a case of the kids getting red ribbons and putting their names on them and putting them up. There were more programs that were involved in teaching and educating kids about what Red Ribbon Week is. So we would like to start working on, maybe not this year, but for next year, bringing some of those programs and providing for the elementary school and middle school kids to bring and promote Red Ribbon Week back. Another program that is going to happen on November 14th, Kate, can you help me out with her name?
Marilyn Belmonte.
Belmonte, yes.
Marilyn Belmonte is going to be coming to Foxborough, and we're going to be having a parent workshop, and it's for parents, it's not for the kids. And this workshop is going to educate parents about what our kids really are doing and what to look for, because I think that as a parent, I have 5 kids, and I know that it's easy to say, not my child, not my child. My child would never do that. But it really is happening. And if we give people avenues and education and open their eyes to what's going on, maybe we can help one child, and we can save one child. And it has to start there. And hopefully this program, this workshop that we're going to provide to Foxborough will do that. And hopefully it will get more parents to be involved in this partnership and come up with more greater ideas, and we're going to be a stronger group. One of the reasons I'm coming to you guys this evening is to let you know that we're bringing this workshop to Foxborough. It is a cost, and we're a not-for-profit organization. We have probably little to no money because we haven't really started any fundraising or anything like that. She's looking for $390 to bring this program to Foxborough. I'm looking to hopefully get the support, financial support from you all for that, as well as maybe some additional funds to promote it, because I want to get it out there. My son is on student council, and he said, make a flyer, and I'll make sure that every student in the high school gets a flyer, and hopefully we can get it home. I know that, you know, you give a high school student a flyer, and it's an airplane, so obviously that's not going to work. It might get to a few parents, but we need your help to get it home and get the word out that this workshop is something that they want to come to, that it's going to be a great program. I mean, I'm excited about it because I think I know everything, but, you know, that's just me. So I'm asking you guys for funding help for Partnership for Drug Free Foxborough to bring this parent workshop to Foxborough on November 14th. I don't know, is there anything else I needed to add?
No, I think that, and the rewards.
Oh, yeah, we're looking,
Dr. Martis, how he would feel about that.
they, I guess you all did an awards, rewards incentive to get kids to, athletes to come to an MIA meeting type of thing. And I would love some ideas. We would love some ideas to maybe promote this workshop with the same idea, with some incentives and stuff like that. I'm not really, my son didn't attend it, to be honest. I mean, I didn't really hear about it, but that's not your fault. That's probably my son's fault. So I don't want to not have somebody hear about this. I want to get the word out about this workshop because it has to start here. I mean, Foxborough has a drug problem, and it might not be your kid, but it could be my kid. And I want to help these kids have a place to go. This website is a great, it has blogs and it has places and it has great links to educate parents as well as kids in need. I mean, it's just, it's groundbreaking, but we have to start somewhere. So that's pretty much it.
I'd like to suggest to the committee that we look to seed $750, which would be more than enough to fund this initial presentation. It would allow us to potentially take out an ad or two in the Foxborough Reporter to allow parents who read the Reporter to recognize that there is an important event coming up. And it would allow them some funds to potentially do flyers, not to the high school students, but to some of the younger students who do bring them home in the backpacks, and the parents do check them.
Right.
And so I think $750 would be good to get us started, and I would hope that the committee would support that request.
Can I make a request about putting the ads, Frank? If the ads go in the Reporter, which I assume they will, can we make sure that one gets put on the front page of the sports section? Because for young parents or the high school age parents, I think that's going to be probably one of the first place they go. So if we somehow could put it on the...
Talk to the editor about that.
Yeah, I don't want to put Frank in the middle of that.
We do hope you'll do articles for us, too, without charge.
Right.
No, but that's Bill
But
Stedman.
I think that'd be a good spot for...
With that with Bill Stedman, if you like.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's also, just one more on one note, it's also my understanding that this same lady, will be coming to Foxborough to educate the teachers as well. And I didn't necessarily understand until it was explained to me. The way she will educate us is different from the way that she will educate the teachers, which I think is really important, and I think that the parents need to know that, because how a child presents themselves to us is very different in the light in school. So I think it's wonderful. I mean, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to get the word out and get motoring on it. And I appreciate if you guys do that for us.
Well, what's important, I think, is consistency.
Right.
This committee discussed it. We then took action by having the evening where we filled up the auditorium.
Yep.
We then have continued with a series of meetings since then. The schools are funding, bringing this person in to help teachers. We will continue to do things with the students. And by funding this program to help the parents, it's another step in that consistency to demonstrate to the folks at home that this school committee is very serious about the drug and alcohol problem that the town faces. Not unlike any city or town in southeastern Massachusetts. We're not unique in that respect. But we're serious about addressing it because, as you said, there but the grace of God could go any of our children. No matter how good of a parent you are, you can have difficulty with your children. And anything we can do to help the teachers, to help the students, and to help the parents will go a long way to help us start to address this issue. Chris, you want to talk about what we're going to do with the teachers?
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with Marilyn by phone, and we're putting together, we're looking at some dates that she can do a couple-hour program for us. And so we're looking at some dates. We haven't put that date together yet. The November 14th date obviously will be much before what we're going to do, but we are in conversation, and actually Marilyn and I emailed back and forth a little bit. And her website is impressive as well. Just Google her name, and you can see the kinds of things, the kinds of programs that she runs. And it is, you're right, it is different from the classroom perspective, and it's more around what would you be noticing with students that might be different in their normal behavior, and how do you pick up those clues, and then what do you do about them? Who would you go to? So I've had some discussion already at the administrative level, so it's just a matter of putting this together, but we're committed to it. The other piece around communication actually is our next agenda item. We will be able to communicate with all of the families well before this date.
Yeah, they're connected.
And so I'll make sure that I send a message out reminding people at least once, and probably more than once, as I get into this technology. I'll probably use it more than I should, but this is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
This is the kind of example of why we, not just for emergencies, this is the kind of example of the messages that we want to send out and the opportunities that we want to give parents to be able to get more involved. And as you know as a parent, and I know as a parent, sometimes we just miss the cues.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have an expert in the room who can give you some of that from their perspective as kind of an outsider looking into the community. So.
Well, I feel as a parent of 5 kids, my first one's already graduated, and I was that parent. Not my kid. And I don't want to make the same mistakes with the bottom 4, and what better way not to make the same mistakes other than getting education. Right. So I have a very big vested interest, not only for myself, but, for my friends' kids and so on and so forth.
Do I have a motion to appropriate $750 from a revolving account, an account to be determined by Mr. Jackson? I have a motion by Martha. I have a second by Katie. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the $750 say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Awesome. Thank you so very
much.
much.
And then you'll be able to work directly with Mr. Jackson for the release of the funds, etc.
Okay.
All right?
Excellent.
Just a quick question in terms of getting this word out. Are we going to be using the websites to advertise for this? The school websites, the
if that's possible, that would be awesome.
The Foxborough
We'll work
high
with
school.
Chris to use every avenue that we have to reach students and parents.
One of the things that we'd like to do is last time was very successful. Most of the parent training, we were lucky to get 25 people show up. We had 250. 50 of those were students, and this time students will
Students
not
are
be
not
allowed
allowed
to
to
attend because of liability issues. Unless you are 21, you will not be able to attend. But what we'd like to do is actually also tap into Jeff Theodos. That auditorium was totally filled with parents and students, but totally filled with the MIAA new regulations when they were rolled out. So we'd like to talk with perhaps some of the high school administrators and say, how did you do that? Some kids came home and said, Mom, Dad, it's mandatory. I got to be there. It was not, in essence, mandatory, but there were very strong incentives given.
Well,
and we'd like to do the same thing.
It was in the
Foxworthy, the newsletter that goes out. It was also sent via email from the Ahern, the
listserv.
Yes, the list server. So, I mean, and it was constant, as reminders about it. And the coaches as well,
Yes.
from the teams, of course. But
Right. And that was a very powerful motivator. I mean, I remember hearing about it, but it didn't click the date and the night until my son said, Mom, you got to go. You got to go to this, okay? It was very powerful. Marilyn Belmonte has suggested that if there could be a reward or incentive, I know in the past we've done, a chit for an extra dessert or a piece of pizza, that might get kind of costly, but, she recommends that they get an extra credit that goes towards wellness. The problem is that not everyone at the high school will be taking wellness, but if there's some way that we might be able to, perhaps you might have some suggestions for us, Dr. Martis. Is there anything we can do to help to incent the students to make sure that their parents do attend?
Let me think a little bit about that, and I'll work with Jeff and the other administrators and our athletic director, and how did we do this to make sure that we have a number of people in the room. But we don't just want to attract high school parents.
Right.
Right.
Oh, absolutely not.
All
It starts at the lower.
That's why we would like
That's
the
why,
idea,
yeah.
some kind of an incentive
Let
where
me,
if the students remind their parents to
Right.
attend, they can have that. There's something in it to help them.
Right.
There's an incentive.
I'll check with the administrators.
And we will be visiting the PTOs
Yeah.
later this month.
I forgot to say that. The overall goal, too, is eventually to provide a youth leadership program out of it. There's some programs that are out there. It's not been decided, but it's a program that I've looked into. It's called Operation Snowball. If you ever have a chance to take a look at it, it's a phenomenal youth leadership program that it starts in with a lock-in, and then you educate the kids and you get them all geared up and you get them psyched about it, and you get your youth leaders out of that, and from there it's just it's a network of good kids watching out for other kids and so on and so forth, and it kind of just snowballs. That's their goal. So eventually I would like to be able to provide a youth leadership program for these kids. I mean, we've talked about having events for kids on Friday nights, various things to provide things for them to do other than having to go to parties and everything else. So it's a great group of people. We're small, but we're working hard, and Patty has done a phenomenal job with this website. I passed out just a couple of the magnets, but we have those. So that's it. Start small. We'll get big.
Questions from anybody?
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
If I would just like to add one other thing. How we came across Marilyn Belmonte was very interesting, and because this committee has worked very closely, getting the selectmen involved, the police department. We're very blessed to have a very strong cooperation from Chief O'Leary, and also the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. And you'll see Mike Jackman. He has offered to serve as one of the moderators. This website is also a social networking, so it'll be interesting. It's only going to work, people, if you log on and ask for or comment to kind of get that going. It'll be an interesting experiment. But Mike Jackman actually puts on quarterly workshops, and Kevin Murphy and myself actually saw Marilyn Belmonte's presentation, and it is extremely powerful for parents. She works very closely with both parents, teachers, and law enforcement officers, but each of those is a slightly different audience. What do mom and dad most need to know, and how can they figure out what's going on? For a teacher, Sally or Joe go to the bathroom, they come back, the behavior is different. How do you deal with that? And obviously slightly different for law enforcement officers as well. But Maryland has a demonstrated track record, and we're very excited that we could bring this level of expertise, because I think it will help parents and community members to get a better understanding of what the needs and the issues are.
Great, thank you.
Who is Mike Jackman? Can you?
He is with the District Attorney's Office, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. He's one of the program coordinators for Bill Keating, and he does a phenomenal job. He invites our nursing staff, our wellness people, and he puts on tremendous resources with quarterly workshops, and that's how we actually found out about this resource.
Okay, you want to give us an update on Connect Ed?
Sure.
Thank you very much, as well as any other security updates you can give us on the schools.
Okay. First of all, I want to acknowledge again and thank the committee for funding Connect Ed. It wasn't an item that was built into this budget, but we were able to utilize some funding from the FY07 budget to be able to do that. I also want to, on behalf of Chief O'Leary, to also thank the committee. I know that he's very appreciative of that. We've been meeting regularly and talking about making sure that Connect Ed is up and running. But what I thought I'd do tonight is just spend a few minutes talking about what is Connect Ed. And I've included in the packet, I put in the brochure for the committee and for the public. I'll just go over some of the highlights. This product is a leader in school-to-parent communications. It enables school administrators to record, schedule, send, and track personalized voice messages to thousands of students, parents, and staff in minutes. So we literally can get the message out to students and parents and staff about any issue, or, as the example was tonight, about any event that we think is important for people to be aware of and to think about attending. And they break it into 4 different areas, and I'll just talk a little bit about a couple of them tonight. There's a community outreach piece, and that's obviously the one that we're going to spend most of our time with, and I think that they're looking at the use. And about 80% of this communication is through community outreach. It's information that we're sharing with people, and it's part of our plan to make sure that our schools are safe and secure, and to be able to communicate with parents regularly about that, I think will be really helpful for us. The second one that we'll roll out much later on is an attendance notification. We think this has some power, particularly at the high school level, where we can let parents know that there might be some attendance issues with their students. The emergency communication, that's the one that we all hope we never have to use, but it's something that is very, very important to make sure that parents, and I use the example of the lockdown here last spring, and to be able to create a message just in a matter of a few minutes, and to let parents know, and also to let them know that you're going to update them at a certain period of time, I think would have helped the whole communication process and would have certainly led to less confusion. And then there's opportunities, and something I know the committee is interested in, there's opportunities to survey on occasion. So we'll be able to ask the community some questions and get some responses and be able to judge what we're doing and how well we're doing it. So that's Connect Ed. You can see the number of accolades that I have. Some of my colleagues in Massachusetts, superintendent colleagues in Massachusetts, have spoken about how efficient and effective this program is. We are, at this point in time, as this committee knows, and I think the public knows some about, we're working on the technology side to implement PowerSchool. And that's a scheduling, but it's also a student information and staff information database. And so we've had to do a lot of training on that. We spent a good deal of time on that. And it really is the reason we want to make sure that our data is accurate, so when we make our first phone call, which is an introductory welcoming phone call, when we make that first phone call, we'll get to every household, or most every household, and we can then tell, this is a tracking piece of software as well, we can tell if we don't connect with a household. I get a report that comes back to me within minutes that says these numbers, these phone numbers, we didn't connect to. And so it'll be incumbent upon us to to figure out why that happened. And then when we start to roll this out, there'll be opportunities for parents, for us to use not only home phone, but work phone, or cell phone and cell phone. So we'll be able to contact people in multiple ways. There's also an option on this to translate more of the commercial messages into an email message, and even some into a text message. So that's part of it that we'll work on. I expect that I'll be using this at the superintendent level for the first couple of months. And then talking to my colleagues and talking to the people at this company, then there's another layer that each school principal can have an opportunity to use this for their own messages. So one of the things that we want to be very careful of, and again, in reviewing this and talking to different people, is we don't want to over-message. We want the messages to be listened to, and we know how in the multimedia that we're all exposed to, how that over-messaging can be just as much of a problem as not getting the word out at all. So that really is the balance that we're going to be looking at this year, and I know that as we segue into our goals later this evening, and we talk about communication, the goal is to have this up and running by November 1st. I was talking to Chief O'Leary, and I are hoping that we can do that even earlier than that within the next week or so, but we're going to give ourselves that November 1st deadline in case we run into any data issues. I think that's the only thing, as I can tell now, are there any data issues? And I know that Paul Bortolotti, our Director of Technologies, and his staff are working through that now, through that whole Power School function. So that's where we are with Connect Ed. I'm very excited about it. I think it will enhance our communication abilities in the school system. And I know, again, I can speak for Chief O'Leary when he says that it's really going to help the town, any town issues that might come up, that they're going to be able to communicate directly with neighborhoods and section off the community if they need to for any unexpected event. So.
I think they just used the first 9/1 when somebody was missing. I saw it in the newspaper.
Over the weekend.
Over the weekend they used it. They were able to alert people in the right
in that vicinity.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you can.
Yeah. So
Oh,
they pinpointed.
yes.
Right.
There was a...
So it's like, good thing we had it in place.
Chris, do you want to give us an update on overall?
Sure, and we also, I mentioned to the committee, I'll actually mention it now, where as the committee knows and the public knows a little bit, we're working with MetroLEC, the Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council, and they're studying Foxborough High School and the Ahern Middle School. We've given them all of our architectural plans, all of our blueprints, and what they're doing is they're putting their process together so that we can find any places that may be more vulnerable than others, and other places that would be much more secure. So if we did have an event, we would know exactly where to move our populations of students and staff, and to be able to, they put a very, very extensive program. So they have all that data. I know that Officer Hodgson and Officer Chamberlain working on it from the Foxborough police side, along with Chief O'Leary, and then the MetroLEC side, we've had a demonstration. So they're working on that. I don't have an update yet on when we'll have all that data back, but it shouldn't be too much longer. We're working on that now. The committee knows, and let me just find that. That as a outgrowth of our work with MetroLEC, next Wednesday evening, October 24th, from 6:30 to 8:30, representatives from the Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council will present an evening focused on internet safety for parents. as you know, and for the community's benefit, MetroLec is a consortium of 43-plus local area police departments and law enforcement agencies. Agencies work together to provide unique and highly specialized law enforcement resources to all of its member communities. This regional support system allows the communities involved to have access to some outstanding services, forces, and equipment. So when they were visiting the Ahern School, they volunteered to offer a workshop for parents about internet safety. So we're announcing that. There are flyers that have accompanied that. So I think that's another part of our safety plan that I think will be helpful. So that's the work that we're doing on Connected and our overall school safety.
Any questions from the committee?
Sounds good.
Appreciate the update.
All right, let's move on to enrollment.
As we do each year, October 1st is our official enrollment date for the state purposes, really, for the Department of Education. And this has to do with a number of different things. It's how we track information from year to year. It's also how the state figures out funding formulas based on student population. So the first page that you have is the grade-by-grade enrollment. Including pre-kindergarten program housed at the IGO school. And you can see that. So that's our snapshot that we use in comparing from year to year. On the second page in your packet is the projections that were made during the budget process with an update. And as you can see, we projected, for example, 98 pre-kindergartners, and we actually have less than that, which was 2 less than last year, but we actually have, at this point in time, 85. And for budgetary purposes, 3 teachers in that group. So as we go through, this gives us an opportunity to analyze how well we projected the budget, how well we projected enrollment, which obviously has to do with how many teachers that we would hire, how many teachers we would maintain at each grade level. And we were, I give the administration credit, very close to what we expected.
Within 3 people.
Yeah.
We forecasted a year ago 2971. We're at 2968. And I know there was discussion last year during the budget as to how accurate those numbers would be. I don't know anyone who probably could have come much closer than the acting superintendent and the business manager in coming up with those numbers. So great job, Paul and Jan, and hopefully things are going well for you down in Fort Worth. We appreciate your forecasting as well.
So could you go from one to another? Any questions on that second page?
I just have one, Dr. Martis.
Yeah.
Will you send out, in addition to this overall for projections, we'll be getting the actual class size for the high school, and usually each year that also included the elementary and the middle school.
Okay.
Will we still be doing that?
I think it's worthwhile. I've done it in other districts. Let me take a look and see what
Yeah,
what
we historically have
historical
gotten
data
that
has
data,
looked like.
and it's just very helpful. For instance, Kate, you remember the 1 year after we cut the budget, and such a balancing act across all the elementary, but there was one 4th grade class that had 25, and there was it was very difficult. They were able to get the number down to 24 and offer some supports, and ultimately the parents were happy, but that was a very big concern. And
It's important data for us to have as a school
I
committee.
wouldn't want to be surprised, but it's very timely with the budget process.
Absolutely. I'll look and see what we've accomplished in the past. And then, as the committee knows, we also have another sheet that is even more historical, which I think is important because it gives us an opportunity to look back, and also which will help us in our planning and looking ahead. So I think that overall, I guess overall trends, we were a pretty stable population.
Do we have this sheet over there
overall.
for the audience?
Yes.
Okay.
Have a steady, we can go back to 10-103 and look at all of our staffing and enrollment issues as we've gone along. So again, all of this data is just going to help us to do a better job planning in the future. Any questions or comments or anything else that?
I have just one comment. I would like us to pay particular attention to our class sizes at the Ahern and at the elementary, and that's why I'm very interested to get to see, because we're approaching 20, almost 24, 23, just under 23 and a half. Those historically are higher numbers, and we know that from the projections, it's not due to birth. We don't have a student bubble coming through. So as we go through the budget process, I know many of our teachers would prefer 15. That economically is not reasonable, but we've always historically tried to end up at the elementary at 18 to 20. Right. First grade usually no more than 18, if not lower. And that number is a bit of a concern. And also at the Ahern, I just would like us to pay attention to that number as well, because we eliminated 2 teachers in last year's budget, and we're starting to see an increase. And I think it's the onus is on us to really pay attention to those enrollments.
Any other comments on enrollment? Then let's move to a brief overview of the MCAS results. I will remind everybody that there's a full meeting, a full presentation scheduled for November 5th, which for those of you that like statistics and like to dive into the detail, you'll have fun that evening. But we thought it would be appropriate for Chris to give just a brief overview this evening, prepare people for the next meeting.
Good, thank you. And it's terrific that I just want to acknowledge this, that Debbie Spinelli is here, our assistant superintendent. She is getting ready to begin officially on November 1st, and I could be the happiest person because of that. But just to give overview on MCAS, as I think the public knows, just from reading in the various newspapers, the public release of MCAS scores took place on October 4th. And we had been looking at some data, but not all of the data. They released the data to us. And so we're gathering, in fact, Wendy has put together a very thick book for Debbie to begin that analysis. We've downloaded all of the information in the website that we get to. So we have a secure website that we get to be able to take all that information. And we're beginning the analysis. I've already met with Andrea Platt, our K-8 math director, and Diane Casilli, our K-8 English Language Arts, looking both at those areas, and I know that they're also focused on social studies and science, but I wanted them to focus on the scores that we were looking at. So I've met with them. I've reviewed last year's information that they put together. We're actually meeting again this week, and then I'm going to segue that with the work that Debbie is now doing on this. I guess in a broad overview, as EQA said, we are a high-performing district. As Larry has said on a number of occasions, our scores continue to be pretty level, though. I know Larry uses flat, but we can improve that. I believe we can improve that. I've also had a conversation with the administration here at the high school, and then raised this topic at our administrators meeting last Wednesday to begin the discussion of, what are the types of things that we are already doing. And it's important for the public to note that we have a number of things in place that we're moving on. We're spending much of our professional development time at the elementary level, looking at training in a new mathematics program. We think that will pay some dividends. We are in the second year of an implementation of an English language arts program at the elementary level, K through 5. We have a review just starting in mathematics in grades 6 through 12. So we're going to be looking closely at that. and making some recommendations for budgetary purposes. So I think we have a lot in motion. As I was looking at the data, we had some good news, and we're analyzing that in grade 6, both English language arts and mathematics. Our scores were up some. The AYP, and I know that Sue Abrams, the principal of the Ahern School, has a presentation to make next meeting about AYP at the Ahern School. They made their target, their adequate yearly progress target this year. They need to make it again to get out of the sanctions that No Child Left Behind has imposed on them. And as I mentioned, Debbie Spinelli will be working with the directors and the principals, and we'll have a presentation for November 5th. That's the overview. I wanted to make sure that the public knows, and they'll be receiving the individual reports will be coming this week. I think we agreed with mailing them on
Yeah,
Wednesday.
that's the one question I've been asking.
Mailing them on Wednesday. I think we agreed we would mail them all get them all out on Wednesday. And I think upper grades are mailed. I think the tradition has been third and fourth grade. Elementary are in the backpacks. And we agreed that we'd use the same process and evaluate how it worked.
One of the things that I've asked Dr. Martis is that when we have our presentation, to help us focus not just where we're doing well, but to really drill down where we're not doing as well as we believe we should be doing. When I look at some of the other communities, Mansfield is an example where Mansfield scored versus Foxborough. There is lots of room for improvement, but the only way that we're going to improve is to have an honest and open dialogue as to where we have our issues. And I want to do it at this meeting because as each of the principals are starting to prepare their budget for next year, their budget requests, and they'll all come here like they did last year and they'll present their views of things. What's important is to tie back the budget to the performance. And where we have issues, where I've agreed there are weaknesses, to ensure that there's adequate funding proposed in the budget to address that, and then an accountability to measure it going forward. So it's an opportune time if we'll focus in and be willing to share with all of the citizens of town where our problems are. Because then when we start to put the budget together and we're moving funds to those areas, they'll see the correlation between where the problems are, where the funding is, and then hopefully over time they will see the improvement that is a result of the effort. If they don't, then they should change out the school committee and put different people here. But what we're trying to do is to have a candid dialogue of where the issues are, provide the right funding to impact those, and then measure them going forward. And hopefully over time that will have the impact that we're hoping it will. Questions for Dr. Martis on the MCAS overview?
Just a comment. I think that there's a lot of variables that are obviously going to impact what you're proposing, Larry, because we're in the second year now of the ELA program. We're instituting the new math program. So we have the specialists. So all of those variables that we've put into place to hope bring up those scores, we're not going to understand the full impact of that until
not right away.
But as an example, we could say as a committee, as we finalize our own goals and objectives, that 5 years from today, we want to be in the top quartile in all categories. And that gives us that timeline to institute the curriculum reviews, to institute the new programs, to adjust them, et cetera. So I think the school committee goals shouldn't be so much annual as the superintendents are. They should be more long-term, such as within 3 to 5 years we want to move up to the top quartile or the top 40% or whatever number the committee might agree. And then what we should be reviewing is progress on an annual basis, much like MCAS does, to say, are you making annual, yearly progress towards your goal? Anything else from anyone on MCAS? Let's move on to the monthly budget statement. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, our budget stands in a deficit situation of $275,407. That's comprised of salary shortfall right now of $70,130 and a projected tuition shortfall for special education in the amount of $206,400. A couple of the there's a couple of things I'd like to point out. One would be that we built a $125,000 shortfall into the budget in anticipation of picking up salary amounts in the positive. There are a number of situations that have contributed to why we have not picked up the full $125,000. I really do think that we will pick up that $125,000 by the end of the year, and that the salary account will not be in a deficit situation. There are a couple major factors that played into the fact that we have not made up this deficit at this point. We had 2 retirees that we had still projected that would retire that didn't. That cost us a little bit more than $52,000.
Paul, just on that note, though, I just want to emphasize, while we may have saved money with 2 long-tenured teachers, their willingness to stay, their desire to stay, for whatever reason, be it the changes we've made, we now have 2 very strong teachers that are in the system. And so there's a real advantage to having that seniority, those senior teachers who in both cases have a great reputation and make a big difference in our school district. And from my viewpoint, the $52,000, we get back far greater than that in the value they bring to the system every day.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't concur more. In addition, another contributing factor, historically we've budgeted $60,000 to cover educational steps in the salary schedule for teachers. Teachers have the ability to notify us, I believe it's in September and January, that they have attained enough credits to move on the salary schedule. Historically, it's been a little bit less than $60,000. So this year we budgeted, I believe it was $50,000. September's educational steps cost $76,810. They'll have another shot in January, so we still have $25,000 set aside for the January educational moves. But we way, and I'll take the heat, I way underestimated the amount that we would need for this, and so that's contributed. In addition, we've had a staff person that's on an extended leave. We've projected worst-case scenario on this, so that is another major area that has a projection that in a negative aspect. Rather than go through this and read, we've hit the highlights on the schools and the accounts. You'll see educational moves in the various schools. That should add up to the $76,000 that I mentioned. The other thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the shortfall in the special education department. I'd recommend that we take the money out of circuit breaker to cover the shortfall that we're anticipating. We've projected out the tuition revolving account as well as circuit breaker, and after absorbing the $206,000 in special education tuitions, we would still have a projected balance of a little over $310,000 at the end of the year. And we picked up a little bit of extra money in circuit breaker this year than what we had originally projected, which is contributing to that. On the special tuition page, one of the things that I found interesting, we'd actually budgeted 23 tuitions, and we've now actually going to be paying tuitions for 29 students. So we've netted an additional 6 students. Now the enrollment sheet shows that we have 31 students. We have a couple students that we don't pay the tuition for those students, but we count them in terms of head count, and that's why there's a discrepancy. And to give you a sense of where we stand, we had 1 student that moved in. That was a negative, and I'll round these numbers off. That was a negative $37,000 occurrence. We had 3 students that moved out of the district. That actually saved us just shy of $81,000. We had some programmatic changes of 6 students that netted out a savings to the district of $95,000. But we also placed 8 new students in out-of-district placements, and that was a negative impact of $313,000. Then we had projected tuitions for 13 other students, and of the 13 students, we were off on a projection by a minus $6,851. So that those numbers net out that I just mentioned to $182,000 shortfall. How we get to the 206, we also had 6 additional students that we provided summer school tuitions for that were special needs students that we had not anticipated. And a lot of those come down the end of May, beginning of June, in terms of a decision that these students need some additional programmatic help in the summer, so that this is well after the budget time. Those 6 new placements for the summer programs was a little bit over $24,000 shortfall to bring us up to the $206,000 projected shortfall in tuitions.
Paul, could you help those that are at home listening to 8 new placements at almost $40,000 a placement? Would you help them understand how that works from a state standpoint and how the state reimburses some of that fund?
I mentioned the circuit breaker program. A number of years ago, the state provided reimbursement to districts through residential tuition, so an outrageous number, $150,000 residential tuition. The state would actually pay the residential school $75,000. The local school district would be required to pay the other $75,000. They did away with that program, and they came up with a new reimbursement program called Circuit Breaker. The very first year in its existence, we had under-budgeted, or I shouldn't say budgeted, we under-projected the number of dollars that we would bring in from Circuit Breaker, and we've kind of carried that number forward. In Circuit Breaker, I believe the threshold is $35,000, and if you spend more than $35,000, it goes into a formula, and we ultimately get 72% of the cost of that money back. So last year, we brought back in the vicinity of $432,000 for reimbursement. And this year, we're projecting, based on the claim, we'll bring in $510,000 back into the district. Now that money, the $510,000 that we'll receive as reimbursement, comes directly to the school department, and that is used on our offset page. So that this year, we had projected to use $550,000 on offset. Last year, we had used $650,000, but our reimbursements have been down because our tuitions had actually been down. And this is the first year in a couple of years that our tuitions have actually exceeded the budgeted amount. So that a claim is filed by the Special Education Department. It's due in June. The state compiles all of the claims from the school districts around the state, and then they come up with a funding formula. And this year's reimbursement, which will come in 4 quarterly payments, will amount to $510,000 based on last year's expenses. So there's a lag of a year, so that the money that we'll spend this year, we won't see until next year, so that our reimbursement should be up next year from the state for the circuit breaker program.
Which is one of the reasons of using the revolving account when you can't predict in October who might move in that may have special needs, nor can you predict if a child develops special needs or their program has to change, as in this case, and the costs go up. So having that revolving account, or having those 2 revolving accounts, gives us the flexibility in those years where they're up to use some of that money, in the years where they're down to build up the accounts.
In the past, during the budget discussions, it hasn't been an unusual occurrence to be in a situation that if we had some students that we thought may end up being out-of-district students, we would budget for them. And then, in the past, they haven't really materialized completely, so that there's been some surplus funds. This past year, we decided that rather than do that, we would only budget for actual known out-of-district placements. And unless we had better than a 90% chance that the student was going to go, we didn't budget for that student, knowing that we had the cushion, if you will, of the tuition revolving account circuit breaker funds to allow that latitude.
To address, to put it a little bit differently, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but for instance, 2 years ago, when the committee had voted, I wasn't on the committee at the time, but the committee had voted, I think 4-1 to reinstitute the librarian and the guidance positions. At the end, when the budget was put together and the compromise was settled with the selectmen, those positions were taken out because the funding was not available. In that budget was the extra money that you referred to just a few moments ago in special needs, that at the end of the year, when it wasn't used, was kind of given back as terms of surplus. But had we used an approach as you did this year, then what we would have done is 2 things. One, we wouldn't have been holding money for an entire year that wasn't used. We could have used it, as we did this year, for library and guidance. And number two, by using the revolving accounts, you're able to kind of cover that swing from that standpoint. So I think the way you recommended it this year and the way that this committee agreed to do it is a smarter way, because for the taxpayer, it allows us to budget the positions that we think we really need and come up with the best guess we can have on the special needs cost, recognizing we have that the two revolving accounts that if we're off one way or another. And some years we've seen the revolving accounts build up for special needs, and some years we use those. So I commend you for your recommendation, and I commend the board for making the change last year. I think it allows us to do value educational decisions in September, October, November, not waiting until May when you can't take the year back and do anything different.
Well, it's always a very tough issue, and the population is a very volatile population, and it's very, very difficult to predict.
Chris?
One of the things that, because this is not just a Foxborough issue, one of the things that I think we all need to be aware of is that this is a legislative issue. When the circuit breaker first came in, all of us were very pleased to see that we could not just be reimbursed for students who are in residential placements, but students who were being served, that we were spending more than a certain amount of money. And Paul mentioned the $35,000 threshold now. 4 years ago, that threshold was $26,000, and it's gone up. So the placements, the problem is when you have a $40,000 or $45,000 placement, which seems like a lot of money, and it certainly is, the state is only reimbursing 75% of that beyond that. So over the years, because the foundation budget number has gone up, and it's 4 times that foundation budget number. So we need to advocate. The reason that the formula was developed the way it was to give it 2 levers. So one lever could be to reduce it to 3 times foundation, and that would allow us to be reimbursed, or to raise that 75% to 80% or to 90%, so that the state picks up the rest of the higher cost placement. So it's very difficult to budget. There's no question about it, because it's the most volatile account we have in our budget. But the state needs to take a greater share. I used to say the federal government should take a greater share. I've given up on that. Right. I don't think they're going to take a greater share.
So in your next conversations with our state rep and our state senator, yes, that will be one of the agenda items you take up, so that they're educated on that topic. Right. Any questions on the monthly budget statement?
From a budgetary perspective, when we've had, because of the volatility, we have sometimes chosen to prepay. Because as I understand, that's the one thing that you can, with some of your surplus, yes, take a look at. Is that something that we may want to be looking at for this year, even though the money next year might be slightly increasing? Again, because of the volatility, do we need to maybe, again, decide that we need to prepay on some of that special ed so we don't run down that revolving account?
Well, I guess my view on that is when you prepay, you lose the opportunity to earn the interest on the money. And so I'd want to know what are the financial advantages to prepaying something versus paying for it on the schedule. Because if it's just a matter of moving it from one accounting period to another, it doesn't have any impact. But it does cost the town lost interest income by prepaying something months in advance. So we could certainly look at it and study it, but I'd like to see the pros and cons of why one would do that before we
absolutely
make up our
mind.
mind.
No doubt we'd want to do that. It's just something
I guess,
we may want
to put it differently, Kate, and you didn't say this, so please, but I know of some communities when they had a surplus, rather than give that money back to the community, they would use that surplus to prepay special needs. And my viewpoint is that is probably not a good use of funds. You're better off to provide the surplus back to the community, allow the community to decide what's the best use of those funds, and earn the interest on that money rather than prepaying it. And I know that's not what you were suggesting, but in the past, some communities have used it to circumvent giving back the surplus, and I would be opposed to doing that.
So in terms, my only other question for this group, there's a shortfall, but we think it will work out. Do we need to, when will we be more certain, and will we need to maybe take a look at putting a hold on certain expenditures? Are we close enough? I mean, what's the probability here? We think we'll be okay, but it's going to be very tight. So if I could have a timeline, that would be helpful.
Well, I would say to you as the chair, we're only, we haven't hit the winter months, so we don't know what the utility bills are going to be, both electric and gas. And last year, we had, a big surplus in those accounts because it was a warm winter. We will continue to get a budget report on a monthly basis. We'll continue to track where we're either picking up or falling behind. And as we look at that on a month-to-month basis, we ought to be able to determine, are we closing the gap or is the gap getting bigger? And I would just suggest that by the time we get into the end of December, early January, we're halfway kind of through the school year, we should clearly know a better handle on both the salary figure as well as the expense side. And then I would imagine the superintendent and Paul would make recommendations at that point if they thought there was going to be a shortfall on what actions we might take to make that reduced even further. So I think, as the chair, I'm comfortable with looking at it on a month-to-month basis for the next 2 months before we take any action, but recognizing that when you get your budget report, you should be looking to see, is the gap widening or is the gap narrowing?
Actually, that's what I need to do.
I would say the same. I would say that timeline makes good sense. Makes good sense.
So the $188,975 that represent the retirees staying, the educational step changes, and the extended leave. So in addition, we still haven't taken out the $125,000 that we agreed to take out of the salary line, or has that $125,000 been taken out?
It's been taken out.
Okay, so we're not. Then we have this additional expenditure of the $188,975.
But that's also been offset by other things that we've picked up, so that the net effect in the salary accounts is that we walked into the budget year as of July 1st
shortfall there.
with a $125,000 shortfall. We're down to $70,000, so we've made up, in effect, $55,000.
Thank you.
And we haven't projected, and I say I haven't projected in this statement, but we're running monthly projections on electricity, heat, which we really haven't spent any money on heat, fuel, and those. But it's too early for me to sit down and say I need money or I want to release money in those accounts at this point. But we are tracking those on a monthly basis. But they're not reflected in the statement.
And not to put words in your mouth, but I thought I heard you say that at this particular point in time, although it looks as though there's a $275,000 projected shortfall, that you feel comfortable at this point, barring unforeseen things, we're on track to be able to make that up between now and the end of June.
I think we'll make up the $70,000 in salaries. I'm not sure how much of the $206,000 on sped tuitions we'd make up, which is why I recommend that when the time comes, if we're still faced with that type of a shortfall, then I'd recommend the committee fund that difference from the tuition revolving or circuit breaker account.
So to phrase it differently, with the exception of special ed, which we said is volatile up and down, and we have a revolving account to stabilize that, you believe the other budget accounts will come in fairly close to what was budgeted when you net them all together?
Yes.
Okay. So from that standpoint, what I guess the message that I wanted to send at this point is that the finance director, the business manager, feels comfortable, with the exception of special ed, that we're in pretty good shape.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the panic bell is not ringing yet.
Correct. Okay. Any other comments? Paul, do you want a motion to approve the monthly budget report?
Please.
I would.
Motion by Bev,
Second.
second by Martha. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now, what I'd like...
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. What I'd like to do, we're running just a few minutes behind, but I'd like to move to the superintendent goals. And we have at the last meeting, there was a robust discussion around trying to put more words around the overall goal, such as communication, so one could articulate what is the overall goal behind communication, what are we trying to do, and then put a little bit more meat around some of the strategies underneath each of those goals. Chris, each of the school committee members were going to meet with you. I believe they have, and I believe you've worked through with them their suggestions, their comments. And do we have a revised sheet that's out there for the audience as well? Okay. So let me turn it over to you to give us an update.
Good, thank you. And I want to thank the committee members for offering their input. And because of what it has been helpful. As the committee knows, and the public, I believe, knows, we've embarked on this goal-setting process through a workshop retreat that we had that was facilitated by Glenn Kuchar, the School Committee Association. And we pushed through one draft last meeting, and as Larry mentioned, had a discussion about that, and an opportunity to continue to look at the goals and to continue to, as I called it, redraft them, and I think that's where we are tonight. One of the major changes that we made was we split back out student achievement and curriculum, and that was a discussion that we had that we were talking about. Actually, as I look at this, I think my should be 5 at the end. So we're back to 5 goals. It looks like I didn't renumber it, so we start off with communication, build a comprehensive communication system that provides timely information to parents and community members regarding the curriculum programs, budget, and governance of the school system in order to ensure quality education cultivated by ongoing communication and shared town resources. And then, as we talked about last meeting, there are some important, for lack of a better word, tasks that we've put together that we want to accomplish in order to make sure that this overall goal statement comes to life. And we discussed tonight Connect Ed, updating the websites, developing a network of parent leaders, to using PTO officers, school council members to more effectively engage the community, maintaining a proactive relationship with the municipal leaders and continuing those meetings with the town officials to share information and coordinate planning, developing a media plan by January 1 to communicate with parents in the community in a variety of ways to better inform the public of our challenges and successes. And I think in that one in particular, that's something that we need just to be clear about how we do communicate as well, because I think there are a lot of things going on in the district that I've been able to pick up in the last couple of months from principals and directors. And then to tie this, and I think this is very important, to tie this to the district improvement plan, we have a section of the district improvement plan titled Communication and Collaboration, and to really tie that back to evaluate how that district improvement plan is working and to be able to report that to the committee and the community. So that's communication. Do we want to, one by one, Larry? Do we want to?
Why don't you walk through all of them, and then we'll come back and revisit them if anyone has questions.
Okay. Our second goal is around student achievement. Build a system to more effectively track student achievement linked to budget expenditures and, again, the district improvement plan. Some of the tasks in that: explore various approaches of better practices to educational innovation, prepare preliminary recommendations to the school committee by January 1, with final recommendations by June 30. Assess current staffing levels to ensure that academic achievement and education programming are efficiently resourced through budget allocations. Review class size research in comparison to Foxborough's policies/practices and make recommendations before the 2008-2009 budget is approved. So that would be an ongoing looking at class size, and something that actually Kate just mentioned in our enrollment report. Evaluate and assess guidance structure and services to increase student achievement. That's one that we've all been talking about. And then research data about college acceptances, admissions, completion by March 31, and present recommendations to the school committee by June 1. Improve opportunities for students and parents to learn about college and school-to-work programs. So that's something that we talked about in terms of the whole idea of college. How are we doing? What do we need to do better? So that's under student achievement. current curriculum review cycle to better support and increase student achievement as measured by MCAS, SAT, advanced placement courses, and our local benchmarks. And the tasks under that: evaluate the effectiveness of the current comprehensive curriculum review cycle by January 1, make recommendations prior to the approval of the 2008-9 budget. Evaluate updated wellness curriculum for opportunities to further address drug, alcohol education, and childhood obesity by May 1st. Study and assess the rigor of the curriculum specifically in the areas across student populations, and evaluate curriculum enhancement opportunities for gifted and talented college prep and special education students. Evaluate the second year of implementation of the literacy program at the kindergarten through grade 5 levels. Engage administrators, teachers, support staff, students, and parents to define the needs of the district-wide technology curriculum prior to the evaluation cycle. The fourth one is around early education. Explore and investigate early education opportunities. Survey the community by January 1 to gain input into planning for the potential of full-day kindergarten. Evaluate school capacity and impact on classrooms. Complete a grant request by November 15. We put it November 15 because that's when the grant request is due to the Department of Education. So if recommendation is approved to proceed, that's really a planning grant, so that there's no confusion about that. It's not an implementation. It's planning for the program. Prepare students for kindergarten by working with private, public preschool programs to assess student needs and program ramifications. Present recommendations to the school committee by June 15. And then the last one, number 5, demonstrate accountability in the following areas. Prepare and present a budget to the school committee which adequately meets the needs of students in the community. Build a database of student assessment information, such as in English language arts and mathematics, to better track progress, link to the district improvement plan, school improvement plans, and budget resources. Include student subgroup information as calculated by the Department of Education to assist in the identification of needs. Prepare initial report to the school committee by December 31st with quarterly updates. Compliance with the duties and responsibilities contained in superintendent of schools' job description and principles of effective leadership, and probably should segue that. I know that Katie's probably going to say something about it later, but we're talking about the evaluation process using the job description or the principles or the principles. And then, as came out of our workshop, review legal services for efficiency, effectiveness, and cost. Prepare report to the school committee by May 1, 2008. So that's the redraft of the goals. And again, I appreciate the input from committee members. I think that we're 2 weeks farther along in this, and I think we should all be pleased about that, and there may be some more work to do.
I guess I would just say that I think this is probably, although it's still a work in process, one of the best documents we've had in years, so that the school committee and the superintendent are aligned with what is expected, when is it expected, what is the timeline, the tie into the district improvement plans, et cetera, et cetera. It's just such a far improvement from what we've ever had, and I don't know whether the committee is prepared to move forward with it tonight or not, but even if they're not, and we continue to tweak it, you clearly have direction from the committee as to where we want to go and how we want to get there and the timeline we want to do it. And we've clearly articulated timelines for reporting back to the public as well on the progress we're making. So, Martha?
I think what's so important about this, having sat on this committee for such a period of time, is this spells it out, and it gives us all timelines to live by. I mean, we're all, I think sometimes when you sit on a committee and you talk about what you want to do and how you want to do it, unless you put it down on paper, unless you document where you want to go, and the timeline that's involved. This is what impresses me. It gives us all something to reach for, and it's something that we can refer back to and know whether we're on target or not. And I think, if anything, it lends to our accountability to the community and to the school system. So I personally can't thank the committee enough for coming together and helping to build this. Chris, your expertise in this area and taking a look at our system and knowing what we need to do is really so important for all of us. And I can't thank you enough for coming together with us and putting together this document. I think it speaks well for the committee and for you, and I think this will hold us in some high esteem to the community, that we are very serious about what direction we want to go in. and this spells it out.
Any other comments? Beverly?
No, I'm
Kate?
ready to move forward with this.
Okay, Kate?
Excellent document, I'm ready to move forward. There are a couple of fine points that I'd like to just bring up. Under student achievement in the overall goal, we're building a system to more effectively track student achievement linked to budget expenditures in the district improvement plan. And I believe there's another piece to that overall goal, and that is to develop a plan to increase student academic achievement beyond current levels. I'm not going to do it in a year, but I would like you to have developed a plan to do that, as well as linking to budget allocations and the district improvement plan. I think that's an important piece to add.
Well, Kate, I guess the district improvement plan actually does that, but I'm okay with reinforcing the language so that it's very clear to someone who looks at this document who's not familiar with the district improvement plan. But the improvement plans do have a year-by-year progress that we've laid out showing where we want to go and how fast we want to get there. But I have no problem with adding something to this as well.
Yeah, I really
That's
feel
good.
very strongly
Okay.
that people need to know, because we've said here that we not only want a system to track what we have, we want a plan to move our system beyond that. So
Right.
I think it is important to say what you mean. Like Martha says, it's a map, and if you don't know where you're going, you're not likely to get there.
Right, but the district improvement plans are the map itself. They do that, but I have no problem with tying a better reference to the two.
And the only other thing, and it may not be doable for this year, but I think it's important we have a discussion, and that is, under student achievement, we have an AQA report that says we have a student absenteeism problem. We're even higher than the state at 13%. That's rather shocking. And again, I don't expect to solve the problem in a year, but some language around assessing the current student absenteeism data and student attendance policies to develop a plan to reduce or, to improve student attention, maybe to put it in the positive, so to improve student attendance.
Yeah. Okay, I would support that as well. Anything else, Kate?
Yeah, the last one under communication, we've talked about this many times here, and I don't know, there are a lot of bullets there, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend making it a bullet, but where we say update the district and school websites by January 1st and develop a plan to keep up to date.
Are we doing that? Isn't that an ongoing process already?
Well, the problem with the websites that I see is that we don't have a part-time person who's responsible for the websites. So lots of people keep stuff from the website long after it's expired. And when you navigate through our websites, what you don't see is a world-class maintained website. You see, in some cases, lots of old stuff that should have been taken down that wasn't taken down. And in some cases, they're not as coordinated as they could be. So part of the idea was to look at, and I've encouraged Chris to take a look at whether or not, because it's no one person's job to do all this. And so what happens is it doesn't always happen. And so I've asked him to take a look at whether or not a part-time person, 1 or 2 days a week or a half day a week, whatever it might be, would be worthwhile in having the sole responsibility for all of our websites and making sure they link well together, that information that maybe comes up in a meeting like tonight gets up tomorrow, not 3 weeks from tomorrow because people were busy, or that information, once the meeting is done and over with, that information be taken down. And because it's not any one person's job, it's hard to keep on top of those. And so when parents go to some of these websites, some of the complaints are, it isn't as professional as we'd like it to be, it isn't as current as we'd like it to be, and it doesn't communicate all the information we'd like it to communicate. And so I think it's important to look at all of that and figure out a way that if you're going to have websites, they need to be updated, they need to be current, they need to be as helpful as possible. If you're going to create a website, and I think that the town found out that I think it was the Sun Chronicle did a study a year ago of websites, and the town of Foxborough's website was rated very poor. And some towns have put money into creating a great website and then not keeping it up to date. Other communities spend their effort keeping it up to date. And when you talk to those communities that have kept it up to date, it's not a technology issue, it's often a resource issue. And having a plan around who's going to own it and who's going to be responsible and who's going to be held accountable. So,
Shouldn't we leave that up to administration to try to figure out what type of person they might want to put in that place, or who should be responsible, and just come back to us with it.
Well, that's why we
By the
say develop a
January
plan.
1st.
It says, let Chris develop a
I would
plan.
be willing to just let it go with that, because
Yeah.
I don't think we should be that's micromanaging. We should just
Right.
allow administration to look into it and come back to us and tell us what they need.
I think it's important that Chris and his team comes back and says, here's what we think the websites should communicate, should do, should whatever, and here's what we're going to need to do to make that work effectively. And then the committee can evaluate that request. I've just said to him that if he thinks it requires a part-time resource, he should make that recommendation, if that's what he and his team think. But recommend a solution to us that he thinks will work, and then we'll negotiate from there, as opposed to, well, I didn't want to spend any money, so I recommended this kind of a thing.
I think that's very reasonable.
If I may, though, if I could finish, I don't know if it's following that or is a separate bullet, but I feel very strongly that, and what I'd like to suggest is that we need to increase parent-teacher communication through the use of the school website, phone lists, to improve and support communication between parents, teachers, and administrators. Not all of our teachers are using Teacher Web, where our websites aren't updated. So if the task is just to update the district school website, that's fine. It doesn't need to be a separate bullet, but I think we should always state with the task what the end result is. And I don't know if you see it as one and the same or as a separate one, but I think it's time that the line in the sand is we want to do it better. The whole idea of building a communication system is to increase that communication between parents, teachers, and administrators. And there's a variety, and I don't expect you to accomplish this in a year, but I do want that as part of the plan, because we've had teacher webs, we've had websites, we've had teacher web. We're not having the complete success that we want. So I'd really like to see our phone system is atrocious. That's probably so far down the list, and there's going to be such a shortfall, we may never address it. But if there's a plan around it, then I would, I think that's what's important.
Well, up above it says here, to build the system that will provide timely information to parents and community members regarding, curriculum, budgets, governance of the school system, in order to ensure a quality education cultivated by ongoing communication and shared resources. Do you have some language you'd like to insert either up above or as part of the second bullet?
Yes, would you like me to state it for the
Please.
third time? It's to increase
You don't have to be
parent-teacher-
sarcastic, Kate.
I'm not being a sarcastic.
If I had heard it the first two times clearly, I would have, okay?
Then let me say for the third time, increase parent-teacher communication through the use of school websites, phone lists, to improve and support communication between parents, teachers, and administrators.
And where would you like that?
Either as part of the update the district school website, so it's clear that update, or as a separate bullet. I don't have a preference.
All right, and do you have that in writing that you can give it to Chris?
I'd put it right in underneath. I wouldn't put it as a separate bullet. I think
Yes,
it does make
that's-
sense in that bullet.
Anyone reading it will understand
Yeah.
what your update is about.
Yeah, good.
All right, and you have it in writing to give it to Chris?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just one thing, when we talk about updating the district and school websites, you just can't assume that every parent has access to the website.
That's correct.
And I think that's always been something that has bothered me over and over, that not every parent has access to the website. So how do we communicate with those parents?
Yeah, I think that's part of the media plan, too. I think that's really part of it. And Kate mentioned the phone list, and there are a number of different ways that we can do that. So, and for me, at this point in time, it's a matter of gathering what we do and trying to see how coordinated we are and what the effect is. Who's listening to it? Where do you hear this information, and how do you hear it? So, I think all of these bullets together put this together. We'll end up putting it together in a much more proactive way. And so I think adding that part is good.
We've never had a communication plan. So whatever we come up with over the next 6 to 9 months will be a zillion times better than we've had before. And it will allow us to build on the one for the following year. So Kate's right in that we may not achieve all of this to the degree we'd like to, but this is going to be a far improvement from anything we've ever had and build a strong foundation for going forward.
Is there any way we could consider sometime in the future trying to survey the parents in the system as to what is the best way to get our message out to them, one way or the other, because we might be surprised that not as many people have computers in their home or access to a website, and we can't just assume that they're getting the information.
Or that even if they do have access, Martha,
That they're getting on?
that how many think about, with everything going on in their life, think about, oh, this is the website. And it's not just one website that we have. We have multiple websites, and it can be very difficult sometimes to navigate through there. So, a very valid point. Bless you, Frank. Any other comments?
Just one. Under the last topic, the accountability, the reference to the principles of effective leadership. I don't have it with me tonight, but when we were looking at the actual job description, it's from the old policy manual, and it's dated, at least a decade or more from this point in time. So the question is, do we want to use the policy that we have right now for the job description for superintendent, using that as our principles of effective leadership? Because it does categorize a lot of the things that we're expecting Chris to do because he is the superintendent. But I think it's something that we do need to review, maybe at a future meeting when we discuss, when we review the scale that we'll use for each of the assessment, evaluation of the goals.
What I'd like to suggest is if the committee can kind of coalesce around these goals tonight, the next step for the next meeting would be to have you come back and say, okay, I've worked with Chris on a job description and an evaluation instrument or tool. Have the committee agree to that, which is step number 2. And then step number 3 is for the committee to step back and say, okay, so what are those long-range goals that the school committee should be held accountable for? They aren't, in my view, on May 1st to do this or June 9th to do that. They're more robust in the sense of, as I said, we'd like to be in the top quartile within 5 years in terms of the MCAS scores, or we'd like to, whatever it might be. And so what I'd like to do is try to finish this tonight, at the next meeting finish the instrument, and then by the next meeting have the committee coalesce around its own long-term goals and objectives for the community.
Okay. That was the only comment I had regarding these goals. I think that they're very concrete. Anyone can pick it up. They can read it. They can understand it. I think it's encompasses a lot of what we want. So I'm happy.
So could I have a motion to approve with the 3 amendments that Kate made?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Katie, second by Bev. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And then Wendy, for our next meeting, make sure we talk about putting Katie on the agenda for the instrument and the job description. Okay? All
Larry,
right.
just one question. So if we could just have a clarifying, as Glenn Kuchar told us, now that we have Dr. Martis's goals, our goals will parallel that. So we now we're agreeing that the school committee will have 5 goals around these broad areas: communication, student achievement, accountability, curriculum, as managing you, Chris, once we get the evaluation system. So you want us to start preparing of what we would like to say around some of the individual items that we'd like to have accomplished? Is that,
Yes.
and to bring that, each of ours, or should we turn that in to get an idea so we can share them, or just bring them to that?
Turn them into me, then I'll try to put the 5 of them together and bring them back out to the committee.
That might be more helpful than waiting for the 15th, because I know I will take twice as long unless I have something kind of done up ahead of time.
Right, so what we're going to do is Katie's already working on her instrument. We're going to have that at the next meeting. Between now and the next meeting, if you folks will put together your thoughts and ideas, I'll then pull all that together and we'll have that on the agenda for the following meeting, because then what you'll have to look at is the combined all people's viewpoints, and think about that before that next meeting. All right? Okay. Other matters. Let me start with the superintendent first.
That said, I was just going to mention the internet safety.
Okay. And you've already done it?
Yes.
Okay. I guess two things that I wanted to mention. First of all, I mentioned, I believe, at our last meeting that I was reaching out to the selectmen to set up a meeting so we could start thinking about what's the financial situation look for the next fiscal year, et cetera. We have scheduled that meeting with the selectmen at the town hall Wednesday night at 5 o'clock. Beverly and I will attend along with Paul and Dr. Martis. On the other side will be I guess the chairman and the vice chair of the school, of the selectmen, the town manager, and Randy Scollins will be there as well. Wendy, would you make sure that meeting is posted, even though there's some disagreement? You don't have to post if it's just a subcommittee. Let's just post it so anybody knows that we're meeting to talk about the budget.
Okay.
All right? But that meeting will be Wednesday night. What we're going to really talk about is what are they seeing as revenue projections going forward? What's the impact of Patriot Place on the revenue projection? As you know, historically, we've had roughly a 70-30 split. But with Patriot Place revenue, there are additional expenses on the municipal side that will have to be absorbed with that additional revenue. So we need to be able to talk through and strategize so that we can give direction to Dr. Martis and his team as they start to prepare their budget requests to know what we think we're going to have in terms of revenue. So we'll report that, Beverly and I will report that back out to the full committee at the next meeting, and Wendy will have that as an agenda item as well. We will probably summarize that meeting in writing, which we'll send out, but we'll discuss it at the public meeting. We'll have a copy for the public as well.
Larry, on that point, when is it reasonable that the selectmen and the subcommittee will make a determination of the actual split? And that's much later in the budget cycle.
Right. I mean, I only bring it up in the sense that the Patriot Place will create a burden on the municipal side. And so I didn't want someone thinking if Patriot Place was going to generate X number of dollars, the school gets 70% of that as well, because there's going to be a burden on the community. And so while we're not going to be discussing any kind of a split at that point, we've got to look at about what kind of revenue would the school have and what kind of revenue would the town have in terms of budgeting. And so we'll bring that number back, just like we did last year, kind of a ballpark. Last year, we kind of got a goal early on from the town side saying this is about. They came up with their revenue and they subtracted the increases in health care and some one-time things and said, here's what's left. And generally, here's what the school would have of that and here's what the town would have. This year, I would expect there'd be some more things up above that said, here's the impact on police or here's the impact on fire result of Patriot Place, leaving X amount of revenue, and then that revenue is kind of roughly split in terms of a goal for the community. What we did last year is we worked to a number, and then we sat down with the selectmen at the end and we negotiated a number that worked for them and worked for us. In our particular case, I believe we reduced our budget by $45,000 over what we had approved and gave that money back to the municipal side because they had some needs in both the police department and in the inspection departments. And in order to balance the budget, they needed another $45,000, and I think we agreed to that at the end. So.
I think what's important and what we've tried very hard to build with the town side is accountability and showing not only them but the citizens of Foxborough who needs what and where. And I think when you can spell it out to people, when you're open, when you're honest with people, it's a little bit easier to deal with them. And I think there was a real give and take on both sides last year, and I think we just need to continue that. You show us what you need, and we'll show you what we need. And I think what I said was, it's not my money, it's not your money, it's our money, and we need to both spend it wisely. And I think we had a very open and honest arrangement with them last year, and I don't see that changing. I think we just both need to present our case, and we need to figure out who needs what and what our priorities are.
Good. My only concern, I know historically 70-30, but the bottom line, and we did this through this wonderful process, the school was 71.3. So if it's going to be less than that, then we need to signal that early on in the budget process to the taxpayers, that there would be less money available.
Well, it's all about compromise, and I think we all compromised. The fact that we said, okay, we can do without this, we'll find something else. And I think if we go into it with the same attitude, I think both sides will show the town that we're working in everyone's best interest.
Paul, can you just verify for me? I know you don't have the number now, but I didn't think it was 71.3% this year. But just so that when we throw a number out, we make sure it's accurate, would you just
Yes.
have the exact number for us? And maybe have it by year for the last 3 or 4 years, so that we all have that handy. But we'll go into the discussions with some high-level assumptions in terms of revenue and some high-level assumptions as to
And that's
expenses.
very-
And then we'll work through our process, build our needs, they'll build theirs, and then we'll come to a compromise at the end. The only other item I had under other matters is that I guess I feel obligated to acknowledge FEO and the 3 people that are in the back of the room. While we had some discussion earlier this evening, we've given a lot of credit to the school committee. We've given a lot of credit to individual members. I do want to acknowledge that you have brought up lots of issues over the last number of years. I think there's been an acknowledgement on the school committee that many of those ideas you brought up were realistic, and members of the committee championed them, and we have made improvements in areas like finance and many of the things you've addressed. With that, I hope that we can all work forwards and no longer focus on prior chairmen and prior meetings and prior issues. I think that your recognition this evening that it is my words, not yours, but it's a new day, and that we have created some credibility. We have addressed the issues. I want you to be acknowledged that many of these issues were your issues as well, and you were criticized to a great degree. But I hope that we can all be constructive going forward and focus on where we need to be, not where we've been. And that if, in fact, we stray from where we're going to go back to where we were, then that's valid criticism, and I welcome that criticism. But I hope that we can continue to move the dialogue in a very positive way by acknowledging all of those that have contributed to our thinking about things differently and are moving things forward for the community, for the administration, for the teachers, for the students, for the committee, and I just hope we can speak in one more positive voice going forward. So I just wanted to say that. Katie, do you have anything under other matters?
Yes, I did. I wanted to bring up something for a future agenda item,
Okay.
discussion about cameras on buses, something that we talked about in the past. We have a new superintendent. I'd like to revisit it. One of the things, I'm still hearing from parents that there are issues on the buses, and I don't want to go into all detail because I think, again, I'd like to have that as a future agenda item. I did talk to Mr. Jackson about costs. I think that again, would be information we would have to have as we're discussing this. And also, the idea of maybe getting data from each of the schools in terms of what the number of incidents that occur on the buses. Again, abuse, verbal abuse or harassment is always underreported. So we'll have to take that obviously into consideration if we look at such data, but it could be helpful to us.
I send Mr. Jackson, I think it's a monthly email on the cameras for the school buses, and he says, as soon as I get through my list, I'm really going to get to it. Last week's email, he sent me back a note saying, I'm just about there on my list of things. But we've also talked about, we have a school bus rental account. And so we've generated some surplus funds in that account, which we could use to cover some of the costs of the cameras as well. And it isn't just an issue for students, it's also an issue for the bus drivers themselves. And so I would expect to see that on the agenda fairly quickly. Anything else, Katie?
Just that there was an article in the Boston Globe about the school building assistant program, as I'm sure many of you have saw. And what I thought was interesting is that they did talk about a lot of the schools that are applying are in need of renovation on their science labs and their science classrooms. So we are not unique. Foxborough is not. And I think what they said was there was about 2/3 of the applicants are in need of those kinds of renovations to their schools. So again, something to keep in mind that we are competing with other schools that have similar needs, other schools that have been maintaining their buildings as well as we have. just to keep that again in the forefront, because I'm assuming we will be hearing, and so the citizens at home need to know about that.
Chris wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, I know a little bit more about the school building assistants. They'll be contacting us in the next few weeks. They're evaluating each project right now, and they'll be contacting us in the next few weeks for probably Paul and I, or Paul and Larry and I, or as many, I don't know what the invitation looks like, to go over what our plan talked about. Because obviously what they're doing is they're prioritizing, and that article spoke a little bit about that too, but the science labs I didn't know the problem was as large.
You know, it's amazing, there's something in the Globe, I think it was either today or yesterday, in regards, it was probably today, that the governor was making mention of the fact that he wanted to put a lot of money into the colleges to upgrade their science labs. And I kind of sat there with tongue in cheek when I read it, because if we don't build the foundation down here, it's not going to matter what you put in up here, because these kids are not going to be prepared to use those kind of science labs. So, you know, they're good intention, but if they don't put the money in down here, you're not going to have the kids who want to even bother with those science labs. So I think, you know, it's like maybe when we go to MASC and if the lieutenant governor is there and if Governor Patrick is there, we need to point it out to him. That's a wonderful idea, but we need the help down here, or else these kids aren't going to be interested. And you know, maybe sometimes when you sit there one-on-one with these people, the light comes on. So.
Anything else, Martha, on other matters?
As far as the policy goes, we're still waiting for a little bit of input back on some of the policies we sent out to individuals, and they will go back to Jim Hardy, and he will put together, you know, the final touch on this, and will be getting back to us. I'm not worried about the timeline right at this moment. Everybody has a job to do running the schools, and some of the people that have to get back to us, we're, you know, patiently waiting for their input. It's valuable, we need it, so we have to wait for it.
Would you anticipate that coming back to the committee as a draft to approve within 60 days or 90 days?
I don't want to put a timeline on it, Larry, because you know, there's a fair amount of policies that still have to come back to go back to Jim, and it's being done. It's a work in progress. So
I guess I'd like to ask Chris then to work with those folks to give us at our next meeting a timeline. Is it 30 days? Is it 60? Is it 90?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, you know, have them work all weekend on it, but I'd like to understand what the timeline is going to be for that. And then let's find out from our consultant how long will it take for him to turn it around, so we can plan accordingly for a first and second reading.
We can do one of a couple things. We could hold off on these and bring everything else forward. That's a possibility. I just think we just need to, if somebody could find out how long it would take for somebody to
We can make that decision.
But we always have the option
We'll have a timeline at the next meeting.
of moving forward with what we have,
Right.
and then inserting these as we go along, and I wouldn't have a problem with that either. You know, certainly the policies that we have in effect will stay in effect until we make the changes, so I'm not, it's not like we don't have anything. It's not complete by any means, but I don't think we're in a bad place. It was a huge undertaking. It was bigger than we thought it was, so I think we've done well to even get as far as we have in what we did. So.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
The music department is greatly enjoying this sporadic arrival of all their new instruments. You know, they were different companies, so they are greatly enjoying that. And by the time we have our next school committee meeting, our French exchange program will already have arrived. They're arriving on the 23rd.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Only one quick item, where I'd like to ask Dr. Martis, what are you most comfortable with in our cycle to review the class sizes for the high school and the elementary and the middle school? Because I don't want to, normally it's this time of year, but I'd like to just know and then ask that, so that Larry knows when is comfortable to plan it for the agenda.
Not the next meeting, we should be ready, the meeting after that, our second meeting in November, we should be ready.
So
and if it delays-
I would like to suggest that we put that on as an agenda item.
Okay.
Because I know with things, if we don't, it fills
Yeah, no,
up very
that's true.
quickly. So-
Wendy, would you make sure that it's an agenda item on the second meeting in November? Please. Anything else, Kate?
Nope, that's it, thank
Okay.
you.
The next item on the agenda, and one of the things we've tried to do is to make sure the agenda clearly articulates the reason for the executive session so that anyone in the audience knows what it is. But the purpose was to go into executive session for the discussion of union and non-union bargaining strategies with an intention not to come back into an open session but to adjourn. I will poll the members. Kate?
Aye.
Deb?
Yeah, aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Katie?
Aye.
Aye, so 5-0. The regular meeting then is adjourned at 9:20.